Hey there, I'm your host, Brooke Van Sickle, as always, and I have the wonderful Paul Brodie with me here. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good, Brooke. How you doing?
Just wonderful. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. So, guys, if you've never met Paul before, Paul Brodie is a 21-time best-selling author and the CEO of Brodie Consulting. He helps people share the stories to position them as experts in their fields. His book publishing company accomplishes this by launching their clients' books in all genres to a guaranteed bestseller with over 100 consecutive best-selling launches, which is amazing. That's 100 books, guys, that have hit the bestseller list. And we're so very excited to have you, Paul, because you have so much knowledge. You have done publishing for so long. You're very well vested in this. So we're going to talk all about book marketing specifically. So thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Book marketing's fun these days, especially with good old Amazon changing the rules every 5 minutes.
It's the case, like everyone's algorithms, as soon as you get it, you're like, I know what to do. Then they immediately change it. All right, well, let's dive in then. So for anyone who has a book coming out, these are going to be primarily children's books, which, we hear a lot in the market about like different tracks for like nonfiction or something. But how long would you want them to set aside if they have if they plan on having like a picture book come out pretty soon? Do you think 30 days? Do you think 3 months, 6 months? How long?
So if the book's ready to go, I usually recommend about 45 days just to be safe. With us, our calendar for Q3 and Q4 is already filling up to the point where we're about to open inventory for Q1 of 2024. So just on that side of things, you also have to think about, well, if I'm going to do this myself, what am I looking at? So I usually recommend game planning out 45 days because you want to research the book promo companies to use. And then you want to make sure that those dates are actually available, because if you're a first time author, and if you are going to do this yourself, not use like a company like mine or someone else's, then you may not already have an established relationship with them. So you do have to get those things figured out. You've also got to figure out the 3 categories that you want the book in, because you no longer get 10 categories in Amazon. You get to choose 3, and you have to figure that out because Amazon's getting very picky. I actually had a children's book launch 2 weeks ago. And with that launch, Amazon decided right after it hit bestseller that, wait a minute, we don't really like the categories they're in. Now, I want to be clear, these categories were aligned. Okay, this is not some gimmick or anything. They were aligned with the book. They went ahead and moved them out of there and put them in 3 other random categories. Now, that could have wrecked that launch if it wouldn't already have hit bestseller. And they did that. Now, fortunately, I was able to go back in and change the categories back, but it took them 3 days to make that update. So Amazon is getting really difficult. That was bestseller, I think 108 or 109. We just hit 110. But then that's the thing. You have to constantly stay on top of Amazon because they really are getting ridiculous with the categories. Now, which are the 2 genres that are suffering the most from that? Fiction and children's books. Nonfiction, they're not overly bothered about, but they're getting very picky, in particular with children's books, in particular with fiction. In fact, with us with fiction now, we are being very careful of what we even launch in fiction. Like right now, we're still doing sci-fi. We'll still do historical fiction, but like romance, we have stopped doing that altogether. One, just because I just never felt like the expectations were very clear with the clients with that. And they had, a lot of them had unrealistic expectations where I'm like, listen, this may not be the right fit. And with Amazon being the way that they are right now, we're not even going to take the risk because it's nuts. So yeah, we have breaking news. We no longer will launch books in the romance category because it's just too much chaos with Amazon. But yes, with children's books and with fiction books, they have gotten pickier than ever. So you really do have to have things aligned. Now, we have launched 2 other children's books since this change. They were both fine. But this third one, they just got ridiculously picky. And that's the other thing. There's no real rhyme or reason. There's no set rule. And I think I shared this with you, Brooke, before. One of my books is called Book Publishing for Beginners. Amazon, and this was nonfiction, but a little while back, they took out the book publishing category. They removed it from my book. I'm like, hold up. I have a book called Book Publishing for Beginners. I have specific keywords in there that are about publishing, and you took my book out of the publishing category.
Right.
No rhyme or reason. So that's why I'm always like, be careful. And the other advice that I give is do not put your final categories in until 2 days before your launch starts, because Amazon does have an audit process. They're pretty much using their people in India to help with that, because that's where most of their stuff's located. And they're also using AI. So with that, their process usually takes around 2 weeks to do these so-called sweeps or these audits, which are very random. So I always recommend add the categories in, final ones 2 days prior to the launch, because that will help protect you, but be prepared for when Amazon gets picky. So I wanted to share this with you first because categories are really becoming a royal pain right now, especially if it's a children's book, especially if it's fiction.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah. Well, and I love that you brought that up, because I always tell my authors, I have a lot of authors that get kind of worked up. Like, so with Amazon, Amazon's been making a lot of changes since last year. They even like stopped stocking as many books in-house, like all the things. And I'm like, guys, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, there is so much that you can do. And if one thing goes wrong, like we have to learn to pivot. You got to be malleable, because if you're just banking on this one thing, you're just going to stress yourself out, you know?
Well, and the challenge is Amazon controls 84% of the market. So when people ask me to look alternative sources, I'm like, you know what? The game's at Amazon. You just have to play the game with them. But also yeah, and also if you're expecting to make all your money in royalties, it's just not going to happen. So make sure you've got a fail safe. Make sure that you are going out there and speaking about the book, that you're selling the book in the back of the room and buying those author copies that you can buy for $3 or $4 each, selling autographed versions of that for $15, $20, and you're making a nice little profit margin. But yeah, is it important to do the bestseller piece if you're able to? Yes, because being able to call yourself a best-selling author versus just being a published author, it really does open doors.